What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. Today's episode is going to be brought to you by Mystery Ranch, built for the mission. And if you're not rocking a Mystery Ranch Fireline pack, well, that sucks to be you, nerd. Sorry, your back probably hurts. But in addition to the finest, most comfortable, and most well-built Fireline packs in the game, they make a ton of other load-bearing essentials, like the 3-way briefcase and the Urban Assault 21, both in Wildfire Black. Ooh, why do I mention these specific models? Well, because 10% of the proceeds from those pack sales are going directly into the Mystery Ranch Backbone series. And if you guys and girls out there don't know what the Mystery Ranch Backbone series is, well, I highly suggest that you go over to www.mysteryranch.com and check out the Backbone series. An opportunity is on the table for those men and women out there that are seeking to go above and beyond with their fire careers. I do know that EMS training, college, fire training, that stuff's not cheap. So Mystery Ranch is there to help. So if you are selected to be highlighted for one of the Mystery Ranch Backbone series contributors, well, it's easy as that. You get a $1,000 grant, which is pretty badass. And yeah, it's giving back to the community. And I know how hard all you folks out there work your asses off to contribute to your furthering your career. So go over to www.mysteryranch.com and check out the Backbone series if you want to find out more. The Anchor Point Podcast is also going to be brought to you by our premier coffee sponsor, and that is none other than Hot Shot Brewery. It's kick-ass coffee for a kick-ass cause, and a portion of the proceeds will always go back to the Wildland Firefighter Foundation. Yeah, that's an awesome organization, by the way. Burke, keep it up. But if you guys are not only in the market for some kick-ass coffee for kick-ass causes, they make a ton of other stuff, like a full line of Wildland Firefighter-themed apparel and all of the tools of the trade to get your morning started off right. So if you're in the market for any of this stuff, well, go over to www.hotshotbrewing.com and check it out. And while you're at it, check this out. Hot Shot Brewery also supports the Anchor Point Podcast by slinging some of our merch. So if you want some of those staples like the Band of Brothers or the Fire Fiend theme t-shirt, well, go over to www.hotshotbrewing.com and check it out. The Anchor Point Podcast would also like to give a quick little shout out to our buddy Booze over at the ASS Movement. And if you don't know what that stands for, well, it's an acronym and it stands for the Anti-Service Shitting Movement. It is a disgusting problem. There's nothing that I hate more than going to my favorite fly fishing place. And I swear to God, every time I go, there is a human turd that is gift wrapped in toilet paper, and that shit needs to stop. So if you want to go and spread the word about burying your turds and get some of the finest poo-bearing propaganda in the game, well, go over to www.thefirewild.com and check out the ASS Movement. And check this out. Listeners to the Anchor Point Podcast can get 10% off their entire order. So if you want some sweet swag, or you have a problem pooper on the crew and you need a turd trowel to gift them, well, enter the code AnchorPointAss10, all one word, at checkout and get 10% off. But it's an awesome organization, funny name, serious about conservation. Let's keep spreading the word about burying our turds. So once again, that is www.thefirewild.com and check out the ASS Movement. And last but not least, the Anchor Point Podcast is going to be brought to you by the Smoky Generation. And if you guys don't know what that is, well, you need to go check it out. It is a digital archive, a digital storytelling platform of a collection of over 100 of these wildland firefighting stories dating all the way back to the 1940s. It's pretty bitchin'. Not gonna lie, it's pretty awesome to see these stories out there. But anyways, they not only have this digital archive of stories about wildland firefighting from all across the globe now, which is even more awesome, but they have the Smoky Generation grants. Yeah. So if you are not well versed in this whole thing, well, if you happen to be a writer, blogger, photographer, cinematographer, anybody that's telling the story of wildland firefighting, well, head over to www.wildfireexperience.org and check it out, because the opportunity is up for you folks. All you got to do is submit your story, and if you're chosen, boom, there you go. You got a $500 grant. So once again, that is www.wildfireexperience.org. Check it out. Bethany, you have an awesome organization up there. Keep it up.
views and opinions of this podcast do not reflect the views and opinions of the United States government, the Department of the Interior, the Department of Defense, the Department of Agriculture, the United States Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, or any private, municipal, county, or state firefighting organization, any law enforcement agency, any medical provider, or any contractor employed by any federal agency.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome back to another episode of the Anchor Point Podcast. So it is Dirty August, and it is going out with a bang straight into Snaptember, and I hope everybody's doing well. We got the Caldor, we got the Dixie, we got the French, we got a slew of other multiple large incidents on the map, and yeah, it's not really showing any signs of slowing down, so keep your head on a swivel and stay safe out there. Today on the show, we are going to be talking with a gentleman who's a 22-year vet of the fire service, but he's not necessarily 100% in the wildland game, but he is on the municipal side. Yeah, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, municipal departments, they do have a significant wildland fire duty, and we're going to talk about that. But more importantly, we're going to talk about the components of mental health and overcoming those demons that you experience out there. So, with that being said, I'd like to introduce my good friend, Mr. Steve Orr. Welcome to the Anchor Point. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Anchor Point Podcast. Today on the show, I've got my buddy, Steve Orr from West Metro Fire. See, I almost messed it up. See, I almost did.
Oh, no.
How's it going, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks, man. Great to finally connect after phone tag, email tag, text tag, whatever.
Oh, yeah. It's been a back and forth for quite a while now.
Yeah, understood.
So tell us about yourself, man.
Yeah, cool. Well, name is Steve Orr. I am, like you said, I'm with West Metro Fire in Lakewood. Well, our headquarters are in Lakewood, West Metro, or the west side of the metro area, Denver metro area, which basically includes the city of Lakewood, city of Wheat Ridge, town of Morrison, unincorporated parts of Jefferson and Douglas counties. It's right along the west side of the mostly suburban area, and then just a touch into the edge of the foothills there. Been with the department for 22 years. I am a lieutenant paramedic. I work at Station 9, which is our wildland station, just on the edge of the town of Morrison, right by Red Rocks Amphitheater, which a lot of people are familiar with. And I currently live in Boulder, however, with my son, who's 9 years old, and my wife, who is a school social worker in Jefferson County. That's
nice.
Sort of a little bit about me. Grew up in Southern California and then moved to Colorado for this job, like I said, 22 years ago. So,
right on, man. So do you have any wildland specific experience?
Yeah.
Besides the department that you're in now.
Pardon?
Besides the department that you're in now.
No, not before I came. Though. I mean, before I got hired, I had virtually no fire EMS experience. So all the experience I've gained has been with West Metro. I worked on the ambulance for a long time. I mean, 70% of our calls are EMS, again, very much like a Reno or a Boise, sort of suburban right up against the foothills. And so, EMS is our bread and butter. And I worked as a paramedic technician and basically a field instructor for just under 10 years, and spent 12, 14 years, not 100% of the time, but probably 50% of the time working on an ambulance. And then again, all the wildlands, you want to talk about the wildland stuff?
Absolutely, man. You can take this episode wherever you want.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I don't know exactly when we started going on fire incidents. When I first started, there's just a little bit going on fire assignments that really picked up after we had, the Hayman fire and some of those bigger fires at the beginning of the century. Sounds like a long time ago, but 2002, 2001, whenever it was. And we started sending Type 6 engines out. That was our, I hate to use the term again, bread and butter, but for a long time, that was the bulk of what we did. And then we also started sending various people out in, overhead positions as people either had or started getting further quals. And then we picked up a Type 3 engine. It's been, probably should know this, it's been almost a decade. And that thing's been real busy, needless to say.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've been out so we also had a pretty active prescribed fire program for quite a while. And that largely got, shut down after the Lower North Fork fire in 2000, I want to say 11 or 12, which was an escape fire that turned into a wildfire that was a fatal fire. And so we've had challenges getting our prescribed fire program back up and running just due to capacity was kind of the main thing. But yeah, so my quals include ICT4, FOBS, Field Observer, PIOF, Engine Boss, obviously. I'm a REMS boss, and we'll hopefully talk a little bit about REMS. And then trainee is task force and strike team and line safety. We don't do a ton of initial attack. So, we get a little IA here and there. We do get out on some mutual aid, with our partners. And then obviously we get out on fire assignments, and I've been, like most guys, been all over the country over the last, I started in about, I think 2005 is when I got on the Wildland Team. And it's, it's voluntary to be on the team. We have 70 or 80 people out of a 385 or so member department. There's no requirement that you go on fire assignments. But when obviously you sign up and you're available, you are expected to go, as you know. And, so this year we've been, we haven't had as many people signed up this year. But we've had a Type 3 engine the one Type 3 engine we have on a severity assignment on the Sierra National Forest. And they've done, I think we're on our 4th crew swap. Probably keep that thing out there until October if we can get the staffing. We've sent, the Type 6 was out a little bit here and there, the 2 Type 6s. And then we've had a bunch of guys out on single resource assignments. 3 of our guys are on Rocky Mountain incident management teams. So that's another opportunity if people get a qualification that they can get rostered on a team. That is something that we do support. And then I was a member of the local county, Jefferson County Type 3 IMT for about 10 years. Mostly in the plan section, like I said, FOBS, SIT-L, trainee, and then just decided I could only wear so many hats, man.
Ain't that
right?
The truth? Yeah, man. That's the thing too, is like, I try and stress the fact that you don't have to be, swinging a Pulaski your entire career. You have a lot of opportunity, especially once you start getting on teams and you get those team quals, like using that term loosely.
Right.
So, it's definitely a great avenue for promoting longevity of your fire career, because honestly, you just can't run SAW for 30 years, 25 years, man. You just can't do it. So it's important.
Yeah. I can't even imagine guys my age. I'm 52. I know there aren't necessarily a ton of guys on crews or shot crews, but I know there's some. And yeah, man, just the wear and tear on our bodies, just doing the day in, day out at home. And like I said, largely working on the ambulance, a lot of lifting, a lot of, like I say, lifting, carrying awkward, heavy things without a warm up,
Oh yeah.
Cause people don't really come with handles. You know what I mean? It's not,
quoting that.
not real convenient when people fall. And, yeah, for sure. It's kind of a young man's sport. I mean, that's the other thing that I've learned, that, man, the guys doing the work are the bearded 20 somethings. And I never worked obviously on a crew. It's one of those things I kind of wondered, how would I have done? Could I have, done that? One of those sort of rites of passage or whatever. And we'll never know. But I'm astounded by the amount of work that those guys do, because I have obviously interacted with tons of guys on crews, and then know some friends that are on hand crews right now. And it's astonishing. I can't even imagine. And like, for us, it's voluntary. And I, at times, it chose to be available and go out but I'm not expected to go out 40, 50, 60, 80, whatever, 100 days. Whereas if you're working on an engine or a crew for the feds, you literally, may not see your family more than a few days here or there for months. And I can only imagine how hard it is, mentally for those guys.
Oh yeah, man. It definitely takes a toll on your mental health and your family relationships. It's hard. And that's the thing too, is I think that the dynamic is changing to a degree as far as getting away from that old school mentality and the shut up and dig mentality to actually taking care of ourselves and promoting that longevity for not only your physical health, but your mental health and your relationship health as well. It's important that we take care of ourselves for the future. I mean, we're only here on this planet for a very finite amount of time. Yeah, you got to make the most of it, but also you got to take care and foster those relationships that you have. It's
without a doubt,
it's huge on your mental health. It's
yeah.
Huge.
I made a conscious choice this summer to not be available to go on fire assignments yet. I thought maybe I'd get out early season, but I actually broke my finger in a total user error, bad rafting technique on the, not rafting, but rowing technique on the Smith River in Montana in May. So I had a fractured index finger, and that kind of coincided. So I ended up going on light duty, modified duty, which gives us a great benefit that we have. It allows us to work in an administrative fashion. And we don't have to use sick leave, personal leave, all that kind of stuff. And so I ended up just working on a bunch of wildland related projects that I probably would have done anyways, because I'm so actively involved in that. But that coincided with the beginning of both my son being off school for the summer and my wife being off for the summer. She's a school social worker, like I said. So, and so the bulk of the childcare fell upon her, which it does also when I'm out on a fire assignment. So then I thought, and then we had a family trip, and then it just felt like, I really need to give her a break. Cause she does, I'm gone. So we work a 48-96 schedule. And when I'm gone for 48 hours, again, the bulk of not the bulk, all of it, cause I'm gone. And when I'm gone on fire assignment. So anyway, just the way it played out this year, I just felt like it was real important for me to be home more, to be with them, and just felt like that's what I needed to do this year.
Yeah, that's a good call to make, especially for the, family home life thing, especially for your kids. I mean, if you're out on a fire assignment or always working, I mean, being a full-time firefighter and a part-time dad and husband, man, that takes a toll eventually. And I don't know if your department does this, but I've heard rumors of certain departments out there subsidizing childcare for when folks go out on the line for an extended tour of duty. Now, is that something that your department does, or?
No, it's not. I haven't heard that. I mean, it's, when we go out on assignment, we do make extra money, which is really nice. But yeah, it's definitely for some guys that have, like myself, that have kids, it just depends. Sometimes it's easier to go during the school year because then the child or children are in school. Mm-hmm. It just, everyone's situation is a little bit different. But we don't do anything like that at this point. But we do have, what is it called? A flexible spending, which you can set aside a certain amount of money on an annual basis that's pre-taxed for dependent care or various health care. I think a lot of different employers have that. So we take advantage of that every year for sure.
Yeah, but you hit that nail on the head right there. Is a majority of the time. I mean, this is whether it's municipal fire, structure fire, whatever you want to call it, versus wildland. I mean, it's a very male dominated industry. And ultimately, if you're going to have a family and have children, a lot of that burden falls on the mother to take care of your children at the end of the day. And I do know, I mean, it sucks. That's a big responsibility. I mean, I just had a kid, right? My son is 5 months old, and I'm working, 10 plus hours a day at most given times. But it's even hard, even if I work locally, to, give her some relief, because it takes a lot. Yeah. It's a burden, it's not a burden in a negative sense or anything like that. It's one of the greatest joys of my life, but it's hard. It is hard on your wife. So, and I even know
it really,
and I even know couples that are in the wildland game and they have kids, and I couldn't even begin to imagine what that is like for not only the kid, but for, finding all those means of taking care of your kid in a responsible fashion. It's got to be so hard.
Yeah, man. And we do not have family locally. My parents are both deceased. My wife's parents live in Kansas City. And so, people that have family close, I mean, I'm envious. And I know having family close isn't always great because, family's family. But I am a little bit envious of people that have, grandma and grandpa that are real close that can help take care of share that burden. And it made me think of something. I was talking to another firefighter. So recently, and I mean, this is not new information for me. So what happened, I've noticed though too, when I come home from work, so how we keep the station real clean. Everything on the rig has a place.
Oh yeah.
Everything is exactly where it needs to be. And I come home and there's, say, clutter. And so I start thinking that it should be like everything needs to have a place. And like, why isn't it where it's supposed to be? And so what happens, or it's not clean. And so what I've noticed that part of my challenge is bringing that standard home, so to speak. Whereas, so what am I focused on? I'm noticing the clutter or the dishes that weren't done or just the XYZ. And I don't see all the work my wife has done for the 2 days, for the 14, 18 days, or however many days I'm out on assignment. And so I don't appreciate her for all the stuff she does because I'm focused on that stuff that hasn't, does that make sense? And I know that's common amongst us.
Yeah, it's super common actually. And Dr. Minda O's, she's a clinician who, a culturally competent clinician. That's a mouthful. And she literally wrote the book on relationships and firefighting. Yeah. And it's primarily geared towards the municipal side of things, but the same rules apply to the wildland theater. I know I do the same thing because I've been a firefighter for 11 years. And now that I'm out of the game, those culture components I still bring home. Like if I'm missing like a tool, if my wife goes out into my toolbox to get a screwdriver, I swear to God, I'll notice it. Like, hey, this doesn't belong here. What the hell, And I'm the same way. It's part of our culture because we can't turn off that work brain mentality. And we just inherently drag that stuff home with us. And it's not good, but you really got to be really present and self-aware to notice when you're doing that.
Yes. Yeah. And so we're kind of into it here. When I really noticed it one time was, my son was maybe 2, somewhere in that age. And we were trying to get him into his pajamas. Like I think he was, whatever, he's squirming. He's a little kid, like a little toddler kind of a deal.
Oh, yeah.
And it felt like life. And it felt like we were on a critical call, and like, my wife's not doing it right. And like, I'm barking orders, and this whole kind of afterwards is like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I'm laughing about it now, but it was a sign that, okay, something's really amiss. And that was one of a couple different signs. Other one was, again, I was on the ambulance for a long time. I don't know if that was like clinically the greatest necessarily, but I think I was good at how I treated people and treated patients, generally with kindness and compassion and patience. It was, I kind of went off on this patient, and it was in front of, other guys. And one of the guys on the truck, it was either later or at the end of the call or whatever, I can't remember, just said, dude, what's going on? That's not like you at all. And so there was a few different things that were brought to my attention. And that's when I started getting some mental health support through EAP, and was given a PTSD diagnosis, which I wasn't completely ignorant to the fact that this is again 7, 8 years ago, something like that. Wasn't completely ignorant to the fact that firefighters are susceptible to PTSD, but I think I still thought, oh, that's a combat veteran thing. Mm-hmm. But that's a military deal. We don't really see that much stuff, or, it's not that bad. It's not like the inner city of Chicago or whatever. Like, I'm not seeing that many people die, or what all these, call them excuses or rationalizations, or just, I don't know, just the stories we tell ourselves. But like, no, your nervous system is really jacked up, for a variety of reasons, including the sleep deprivation or irregular sleep, just the constant vigilance that's required in this profession. Like, are the tones going to go off, and what am I going to see or be asked to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that was, that was huge for me to recognize that I was being affected in ways that were not healthy, and I was bringing it home in ways that were affecting my family. And that was sort of the beginning of when I started making some different choices, which at that point was, I need to get off the ambulance, which is pretty common for many of us. There's a few guys that have been working on the ambulance for 20 or more years. I have no idea how they do it.
I have no idea how they do it either, man. That's incredible.
They wire differently. Are they, it affects them differently? Are they in more denial? I don't know. But I just know for me, it was getting to a critical point that I needed to make a big change. So
yeah, and that's the thing too, is like you mentioned something there about the acute PTSD component of that. We think of PTSD or PTSI, post-traumatic stress injury, as a one-time event, right? That's kind of the common, misconception that we have out there about PTSIs. And I think that we're not really subjected to the acute factor. We're subject and kind of prone to the cumulative flavor, of PTSD or PTSI, post-traumatic stress injury, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think it's a culture thing too. As like I was saying earlier with that shut up and dig, or that hard ass mentality, the old school mentality. I think that we've kind of trained ourselves to be that way, and it needs to change. And people like you coming on the show here, that's huge. It's normalizing it. This happens. It's normal. That's just your biology. That's human nature.
Yeah, man. And like I said, I got hired in 99. was a different time. And some of the old timers at that point were Vietnam vets, guys that were raised in the 50s, maybe, but definitely 60s, 70s. Man, suck it up, Buttercup. There was just a total lack of awareness for mental health. And it's like, dry your eyes, man. I don't even want to hear it. And so I was not, what's that?
Kind of one of those don't come to me with your problems kind of mentalities or cultures, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So we would just what I do, just internalize it, and I wouldn't talk about it much, if at all. It was, it was just a different era. And we had a huge wake up call or calls. We had 2 guys in our department die by suicide.
Oh shit.
And I wanted to, I meant to look up, I should know the dates, 8-10 years ago. And one was related to, I think, substance abuse. One was related to lack of sleep, not necessarily even just work related. But I can say that, our chief and our department has made a huge commitment to mental health, resiliency, and wellness. And we've come a long ways. We still have a lot of ways to go. Because there's a bunch of us, like I said, that just buried all that stuff for so long in the first 10 and 20 years of our careers in some cases or whatever. And we're talking about our feelings or, debriefing or any of that stuff just was discouraged and just wasn't done. But the newer generation is being trained starting in the academy. And so the awareness, is starting at the start for those folks. And so I'm hopeful that it is changing, because the nature of the job is we're not running any fewer calls.
Yeah. Now you're running more.
Right. And so we have more ambulances. So we've been able to reduce call volume on the busiest units. But we still have a few of our rigs that are really, really busy. And again, it's not just call volume. Of course, sometimes, is it overnight? I'd rather run 10 calls during the day and none at night than no calls during the day and 4 overnight. And so, like you said, the cumulative effect of that sleep piece. But yeah, we've made a huge commitment. Recently, we started working. We'll work with an organization called Building Warriors. What we found is that you said the word clinically or culturally competent. Was that the word you used? Yeah. So there's an organization here in the metro area called Building Warriors we've been working with, and we just recently signed a contract with that we're going to increase our relationship with them. We're asking them to kind of make a commitment to us, and we're making a commitment to them. So whether that's like more routine wellness or mental health evaluations, increased training, just building that relationship between our organization and theirs to move this forward. Because, like I said, we're just learning. I want to say just learning. We're not exactly sure what are the solutions to mitigate the effects of this work. I mean, I think we're learning what that is. But for all those years, we just weren't really aware. So we're trying to make that, it is a priority. And I know that things are changing, but it's also going to take some time. It's not like all of a sudden we're just going to flip a switch and solve these problems.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing you brought up perfectly right there. As these solutions, you can have a blanket training, but at the end of the day, if anything happens, it's up to the individual to get the right treatment for them. Yeah. It's not a one size fits all kind of program. What may work for Johnny over here is not going to work for Sally or Jimmy or Tom or whoever, So I think that, recognizing the steps that you could take to not only be self-aware, but aware of your fire family around you. Those are huge, man. That's huge. Yeah.
And I know that part of what Building Warriors is doing, they offer services for spouses and partners as well, family, because it's more than just the firefighter. it is kind of more of a family issue. And that's the other thing, the one size fits all. And that's kind of the stuff we used to hear back in the day. Like, hey, well, I worked on X, Y ambulance for this many years. Like, why are you coming to me with this problem? Like, you've only been on this, and you're not, you guys aren't even that busy. So and everyone's different in how they affect, how the stress, the trauma, this job affects them. And so we've got to be sensitive to that. Just like, people learn in different ways, obviously. So when it comes to training people, you need to have some different tools in your toolbox as far as ways to train people. And there's even the pre-trauma piece, I was just talking to a friend that, does some work in this field. And he said that we are 3 times as likely to have pre-trauma, trauma from childhood or adolescence that can affect our resiliency or our susceptibility to PTSI and such. So possibly even pre-screening our employees just to understand the baseline of where they're coming from. We don't know what people are bringing to the table, so to speak, from their personal lives, present or past. So the one size fits all is accurate. One size does not fit all.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too, is like, just because you have previous trauma doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a shitty firefighter. There's no way about that. I mean, I know some people with some, I'm going to swear on this, I'm going to say the F word, but I know some fucking fantastic firefighters that have had really fucked up childhoods. And that doesn't necessarily bar them from employment. It doesn't necessarily make them predisposed to being a bad firefighter by any means. In fact, some of them, like I said, they're the best I've ever met. But I don't know, man. It's hard because I could see where some of those things would be used as a tool to bar people from employment, but I don't think it would actually turn out like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if that was even that big of a thing. We were just talking about pre-trauma and what people bring to the job, but I don't know if that would affect it or not. I
don't think it would. Like that's what I'm trying to say is I don't think it would, but identifying those things, like you're saying with the pre-trauma, I mean, that's going to set you up for success later down the road. And Shannon Mead, a clinician that was on an episode on Anchor Point, she even mentioned that, the sooner that you get established with a clinician or that rapport, that just conversational first name basis with somebody, the easier it's going to be down the road to where if something does happen and you need to really talk to somebody, you're already established with them. Furthermore, you can't really just let stuff build up. You got to take all this stuff and just kind of deal with it as it comes. So if you're to just not build and then go see a clinician and vent and do all your stuff during your session, you need to break it up into smaller parts. You can digest it easier. You can get it off your plate.
Yeah. I think that's some of those clinicians I talked about with Building Warriors. They did some ride-alongs. They came out to the stations to meet folks so that it just, again, breaking down that barrier, make it just a little bit easier to make that phone call. Because that's a really tough thing to do, to reach out and ask for help.
It's vulnerability. At the end of the day, it's putting yourself in a very vulnerable position.
Right. And oftentimes it does, we do wait until there's, again, a kind of a crisis, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I'm hopeful that we will, be able to avoid those mental health crises, not completely, at least reduce those by building that in where, like I said, you're offloading. We need to change the culture for sure. But that's really hard for people. I know it's hard for me to admit that I needed help. But like I said, I had a few things that were, pretty obvious, warning signs or red flags that I needed to get some help. So, and there's been some other ones since then, actually. Like you said, you gotta can't do it alone. I mean, that's the main thing.
No,
we try to keep it all inside, and I got this, and I'm good. And we still have this perception that being strong means that I can't show. The perception of weakness is some sort of like that vulnerability you talked about, or crying, or having emotions. It's like, now where did we get that? My son is 9 years old, and he's very emotional, like we all are. But for whatever reasons, well, we have to learn to kind of shut down our emotions, so to speak, to function.
No, yeah, absolutely.
In this job. And that's a really good skill. But then we go home, and then you're still in that same mode. And, all those years, my wife would say, "How was work?" I'd say, "Fine." I wouldn't even talk to her about it. Whether it was too painful, or I didn't want to share the horrible things I'd witnessed, or, just whatever. It's just easier just to shut down, man, and just be a stranger. And then so we weren't connecting, and then she's feeling like, what's she doing wrong? I mean, that's why, it is such a family dynamic there that people are working with. It's not just the firefighter per se.
Oh yeah. And actually Grassroots, are you familiar with Grassroots Wildland Firefighters?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they actually just put out a big survey for the partner spouses, significant others of wildland firefighters. And that's going to be adapted over the, course of, a couple of years to get the contractors and, the people that have wildland urban interface in their structure department or have wildland programs, but yeah, I mean, some of the responses coming back from that partner survey, they were pretty epic, but also at the same time, it shines a real big light on what's going on at home from the spouses, partners, significant others perspective. And a lot of times, I don't even think that the firefighter really knows it, but the home life and the significant other, they definitely bear and shoulder the burden of what's going on from your shoes at a distance. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Like I said, my wife has been like the rock of the family for quite a few years with all, like I said, all the mental health stuff I've been dealing with, which is a lot to ask. I think we may not realize the effect that we're having on our spouses.
Oh, absolutely, man. So if you don't mind me asking you a personal question here, what was that deciding factor to make the decision to get a hold of a clinician? What was like the hang up beforehand, and what was your ultimate decision to seek the help that you needed?
I mean, I think the hang up was some sort of feeling that I was admitting failure, I was admitting weakness, something along those lines, some sort of ego piece. And then, like I said, once it became just so obvious with that scenario, I talked about getting my son into his pajamas. It was just black and white. And my wife pretty much kind of gave me an ultimatum at that point. And it's not like I hadn't been in therapy before. I've been treated for depression on and off for darn near 30 years. And actually have, a history of substance abuse and been in recovery for nearly 30 years. But for some reason, it was still hard for me to admit that I really, needed help. But obviously I'm really glad I did.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking too, is the substance abuse, was that like a self-medication scenario or?
Yeah, I think it really was. I mean, it was, like I said, I've been clean for 27 years.
That's awesome.
Exception of a brief period about 5 years ago. It was self-medication totally. Yeah. I mean, again, back in the 80s and 90s, I just don't think we really had the awareness necessarily of mental health that we do now. Probably, may have benefited from medications then. Definitely getting some help. But it just wasn't something that people did as much, So self-medication for sure, man. It worked really well until it didn't work very well.
It's typically the route it takes, unfortunately.
Right.
But the reason why I asked that question, I know it's a very deep and personal question. And thank you for being courageous enough to actually, saying this whole thing. It takes a lot of courage to say this. But the reason why I was asking is because I think that we have a culture of work hard, play hard, and we tend to normalize alcohol and drugs or whatever, but we kind of shovel off and ostracize the whole therapy component, the shit that's actually effective.
Yeah. Like I said, I haven't had a drink for 27 odd years. But I would agree that drinking is a big part of the culture, and not necessarily the healthiest coping skill by any means. But it's really an interesting thing. Taking psych meds has some stigma attached to it, and I've taken quite a few of them, like I said, over the years. With varying results. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, so I can't, it's just layman's opinion, so to speak. But some of that is just treating symptoms, which is good for some time period. If someone's critically ill or suicidal or, so depressed they can't function, but figuring out what's underneath that and trying to resolve the cause of those symptoms is really where the work's all about. So in conjunction with medications, you've got to do the work. And like I said, you've got to find a therapist or therapists that are effective. And I've seen a lot of them over the years, and some have been more effective than others. And that's just a little bit the nature of the beast.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And even therapists aren't even immune to this. I mean, I know therapists that are on Lexapro.
Right.
It's part of being human, man. I mean, sometimes you need some help. Sometimes you need a little extra help. And I get that.
Yeah.
But this whole bullshit mentality of thinking that we're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, that needs to go away. Because it's not, man. We're human. We're fallible.
It does. Yeah. And we're asked to do and see and endure some pretty challenging, pretty painful, traumatic things that are not normal. And it takes, like I said, it takes its toll. So just for us trying to figure out what are the ways that we can mitigate the effects of all that. We're really trying different things, and I think we're making progress, but I do know that suicide still does continue to be a very high incidence. There seems to be a very high incidence of that. One of my friends was talking about the 3 Ds: drunk, disabled, and divorced. So the 3 Ds are very prevalent too, as well.
That doesn't matter if it's structure or wildland.
No.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. No, not at all. So, but, I was going to share one thing. When was it? It was, in 17, talk about asking for help. And I also was experiencing chronic back pain, which I still experience to some extent today. It's much less than it used to be, but it was clearly to me not just physical. It wasn't like I didn't have any pain. This thing happened, lifting injury, then I had pain. It was something that developed over time, and I really believe there was definitely a mental and emotional component, just the tension that I'd been holding in my body for so long that was contributing. And part of that, I started taking CBD oil. So my lesson is, if you take CBD oil, find out if it has THC in it or not.
Oh man, sorry. Side
Be
note,
very
man.
careful.
Side note, man. I have CBD companies hitting up my podcast for like sponsorship and endorsement and all this stuff and everything, and I will never do it because the only real way to get CBD oil without THC in it is to go to an actual dispensary and get something that's lab certified, unfortunately. But yeah, be cautious. I'll never take a sponsorship from a CBD company.
Yep. So that was my big lesson. So long story short, I failed the drug test. I knew at some point I knew, but I didn't come forward because I was scared. Should have come forward. I just like, I'll be fine. I'm not driving a department vehicle. I'm not going to get tested. Well, a couple weeks later, I was driving a department vehicle, had a minor accident, got tested. It was truly a blessing in disguise. I probably could have been fired for cause at that point, but I was in a place where I really needed help. And a lot of people not that many people know this story. They just thought, oh, hey, Steve was taking CBD oil, it had THC for back pain, and then they sent him to rehab. Well, I needed help, man. I was at a bottom, and I reached out and I asked for help. That's not just to save my job, but it's because I needed help. And I went to the IAFF Center of Excellence in Maryland. So the International Association of Firefighters has I wouldn't say sponsor, I don't know what the relationship is, but there's a recovery treatment center in Maryland. And I spent 35 days there in the summer of 2017. And it was really, really, really a big step for me. It wasn't so much about substance abuse at that point. It was really dealing with all the effects of work. And then also my dad died by suicide. And that was a lot of unprocessed grief. And it was great to be around a bunch of other guys and gals, firefighters that knew so much, knew a lot about one another without having to say it. Being in that presence of other firefighters was huge for me. And it was a time for me to work through that grief. And so I did a bunch of work, met some people, got some new tools, got a break, got some perspective, completed the program, had to do a bunch of aftercare for a year, I think, after that. That really gave me a fresh start, or somewhat fresh start. That was a really good reset for me. And so that's just part of my story as well.
No, it's a good opportunity for healing. And I think that, a lot of people don't understand how important it is to take advantage of things like that. If you have them available to you, by all means, take them. And there's several organizations out there that I know of that do exactly this. And it doesn't matter if you're, structure, wildland, et cetera, but there's a lot of great programs out there to take care of this stuff. And you're a living example of it.
Yeah, thanks. I'm really grateful for for Chief Lombardi who gave me that opportunity and didn't have to, and for the support I got from the organization. And my wife for watching my son for, like I said, 35 days while I was gone. He was pretty young. He was 5, almost. Yes, he was 5. So we kind of told him I was gone to a training. He didn't really know. But yeah, and there's been others. I've known some other folks that have been through that program or similar ones. And yeah, sometimes that's what you need. You know? Sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes that's exactly what the doctor ordered.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So going into your story here. Let's talk about what you would recommend for anybody who's experiencing a similar or some sort of shared experience that you have. What would be your advice to these folks?
Talk about it with someone. Find someone. We have a peer support group or peer support team that are members of our department. Not everyone has one. that could be a starting point. They're not trained clinicians, but they have some training at sort of active listening, or if nothing else, they know how to connect people with the right resources, whether that be, like I said, through EAP or some sort of mental health professional. I mean, that's ultimately really what people need, is to spend time with and work with a mental health professional. There's so many other tools in the toolbox that have been really helpful for me. Exercise, of course, is a huge one. Journaling, breathing has been a big one. I went through a program last fall, a group called Valor Resiliency. They also do one for more civilians called K4, Kings of the Four Houses, and a different breathing techniques to calm our nervous system when we get activated. That's one thing I've noticed, is when I start getting triggered, anxious, my breathing gets really shallow and it's up high in my chest. So slowing my breathing and getting it down into my belly has worked really well. Those are kind of the main things. It could be, some people, clergymen or a priest, if they're religious, or just talking to friends. I mean, I've sort of used all of those different things. It's not necessarily one tool, but starting, you gotta talk to someone.
Oh, absolutely.
And start venting the pressure, and start putting things into perspective, and start understanding that you're not alone. Understanding, what's really going on with your, like I said, whether it's your nervous system or with your mind and body, and learning how to, again, mitigate all of that. That's, like I said, it's got to start by reaching out for help to someone, anyone, really.
Swallow that pride and just make it happen. And like I said, man, there's a lot of organizations. I mean, there's a lot of peer support organizations within a lot of municipal departments. I know we have one here in the Reno area, but also there's national organizations as well. There's Next Rung, for instance. Next Rung's a great organization, and they do wildland and they do municipal as well. So the tools are out there, and I'm still trying to compile a list for the folks that are listening to this to get a hold of those resources. But it all starts, talking to your fire family as well, and normalizing those conversations, having those hard discussions. I mean, like, hey, Captain, I'm kind of shook up over this call. It's as simple as that, and just moving that ball forward. You can't just stop at, the 10-yard line and not expect it to get it, and expect it to get a touchdown, Yeah.
Having those that's been a topic of conversations. Having the tough conversation, I think, is how we've phrased it. And whether that is holding someone accountable for their behavior, which that's the other thing we've come a long ways in, is the way we treat one another in terms of like workplace respect. That's something that we have made a big commitment to. Some of the hazing, for lack of a better term, that was acceptable years ago is not. And so whether calling someone out and holding them accountable for inappropriate statement is what we call a hard conversation, or maybe it's like I said, saying, hey, I'm shook up about this this call or this situation. That's also having a tough conversation as well. That we're encouraging our officers and our leaders to step up and have those tough conversations. That's definitely a challenge, and that's an expectation that we have. And I think we're getting better. We can always improve, but we are getting better. So that's a nice start.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And that just internalized peer support as well. I mean, just talking to your fellow fire family, that's huge. It starts there usually.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, as more and more of our newer members, or all of our new members, are being trained, at least being exposed to these concepts in the academy, that can be normalized. That's a good thing. And I think, just the tides of change, it just takes time to change culture. I'm hopeful that we're on a good trajectory. I know we're on a good trajectory. I hate to think we're going to continue to have the mental health crises and the substance abuse and the divorce and the suicides. We will still have some. I'm hopeful that will, the rates will diminish.
I'm hoping so too, and I think that a lot of those from coming specifically from a wildland firefighter, the Fed side of things, I think a lot of those suicides, unfortunately, they go unreported, or they might have been classified as an accident. Like someone's cruising down the Angeles Crest Highway or some highway that's steep and narrow, and they just happen to put on the brakes and go off the road. Well, that's one of the things that we look out for too. But the whole suicide thing, it's a dark subject, and a lot of people, it makes people uncomfortable, and it should. Quite frankly, I think it should. That's just my opinion. It should make people uncomfortable. But the point I'm trying to make here is that we need to... Let me rephrase that. I think that we need to normalize the fact that suicide exists. However, we need to be cognizant of the fact that we need to look out for each other and look out for the warning signs, and then we can help each other out. Instead of it being priority one, like option number one, just like Shannon said, that needs to be priority 9,992 or whatever. Because it's always going to exist for the rest of humanity. It's going to exist. But to have the tools to make that not your only option, that's the critical part. Right.
Yeah. And I'll be quite frank that I had suicidal thoughts at times, especially when my back pain was such that I could barely do anything. And I, wasn't able to do the fun things recreationally that I wanted to do. I was not able to go to work. I couldn't sit still for more than about 10 minutes without being in excruciating pain. And again, I think a lot of that, like I said, was due to unprocessed grief and trauma and all that stuff. But I had thoughts for sure. And I shared about it. Fortunately, I didn't make that choice. But I get it. I have a lot of compassion and understanding for people with all sorts of different mental health problems. We have to destigmatize it, because as long as there's continues to be stigma, that encourages people to remain silent.
And that's
because what are people going to think, or how are we going to be perceived, or blah, blah, blah. Who cares, really? I mean, we want to be accepted by our peers, of course. It's tough. It's a tough one. I get it. But yeah, you've got to, you can't save your ass and your face at the same time. I've heard it said.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, that's an old 12-step kind of quote. Like, you got to get honest about what's going on. You want to look good, like, yeah, I'm doing great and the program's working for me. And sometimes your ass is falling off. And yeah, the best thing to do is to get honest about what's going on. And there's such an ebb and flow too. And there's these cycles with mental health, it's not linear for people, and things happen at different times in your lives, different times of your life. And, and so just having expectations about, you just don't know when you're going to have a rough go, I think is important,
I think the best way that it was ever put to me was with Ben Strawn on this podcast, actually. And he said that imagine mental health as being a series of mountain ranges. It's peaks, valleys. Some of them are steeper. Some of them are easy climbs. Yeah. Some of them are the slow winding path. That's just cakewalk, right? Yeah. But the way he presented it is like, okay, you've conquered this peak. You've climbed out of the valley. You're on top of the world. Well, eventually you're going to have to come down that peak and climb the next one. And that's for everybody. Like you said right there, it's an ebb and flow. It's peaks and valleys. And that's for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're EMS, police, military, structure, wildland. It doesn't matter. Even just Joe Blow public. We need to normalize mental health, and we need to break that stigma of like talking about it and just, it just blows my mind because I think our culture concentrates it, the ego component of that. And it's come hell or high water, I want to break that without having people like you talk about this. I mean, this is very personal for you.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Very personal for sure.
Absolutely. But,
oh,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I said the point of this though, and why I have a lot of people talk about this is it's a shared experience. Like Ben was saying too. This is your shared experience. This is something that could help somebody else out there. It's critical that we share this stuff.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad. Yeah, I know it's a tricky one. I was just thinking of, we have this sense of it's the greatest job in the world and so lucky to have it. And that's all very, very true and so great in so many ways. It's almost like by saying this job has affected me, my mental health, like I'm indicting the industry, or I'm indicting the organization, or I'm indicting the, I know, and that, I think that was a little bit of a part of it. Who am I to complain about what's going on? Because again, I should just be so grateful and fortunate. Well, I am. It's not one or the other.
Yeah,
I guess is what I'm saying. And I think that is just part of the training that we need to give people, that we're giving people, and the awareness and the change in culture. Because again, years ago, anything, if it was construed as complaining or you're whining, or it just wasn't welcome. And we have to break that.
Oh yeah. And those leaders out there that are still holding on to that ego mentality of their leadership, let it go. There's no place for that, whether it's wildland or structure. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Oh man. The good thing is though, is that speaking of the training component, like you're saying that these mental health awareness programs are being integrated into your academies. And that's huge. That right there is just nipping it in the bud from the get-go and being truthful with the harsh realities of whether wildland or structure entails, the things that you're going to experience, and being upfront about it. I think it's a good thing. It's making good progress. It's showing a good sign of progress as far as us as a culture and what we're training to succeed with, right?
Yeah.
I will say structure municipal departments are far, far better than any wildland program out there. And I want to see that change because there's a lot to be learned. There's a lot of tasty little tidbits to be learned from academies, like your formal structure academies, or even EMS programs. Even the military. We just don't really do it. And hopefully that will change. Preload all of that.
Yeah. I sure hope so. I do.
Yeah, man. Well, times are changing and we'll see what happens. But since we've been talking a lot about wildland versus structure, let's go with the interplay between the two.
Yeah, cool. I know. And versus is an interesting word.
You're cooperators, man. There's no verses about it. I mean,
I know the verses is so weird. And I heard it. When did I heard it from? I'm not going to say the organization. It was like a national organization that talked about the blue shirts the blue pants and the green pants. And I'm like, I mean, I don't see it. I never saw it that way. One, we wear green pants, or some of us wear tan. I know in Region 5, the municipal departments tend to wear blue Nomex pants for whatever reasons. But we understand that when West Metro comes into, wildland fire, frankly, the bulk of the work's being done by the bearded kids in their 20s.
The bearded weirdos.
The bearded kids in their 20s, as I say. And we are there, like I said, often on an engine or overhead positions, like supporting the crews. And sure, we will work our butts off. Don't get me wrong. But we understand that we are not a guest per se, but there's this whole size up process that's going on. Like, I can only imagine the full-time Fed guys are looking at us like, who are these dudes? They're fat. They're paid way more than we are. They've got all this clean gear and stuff. Like, what are they all about? And that's fine. I get it. And so what we really do is we work our butts off. We're respectful. We try to integrate into the system. And I think that we prove our value, and we have a great reputation. And it takes a couple days though. I call it sort of like the dogs sniffing butts kind of a thing,
That's a great analogy.
You know what I mean? It's like, and we should be sizing up the situation. I mean, that's what we're doing. And you should be paying attention to who are the adjoining resources that we're working with.
Oh, absolutely.
Can we trust them? Do we need to watch out for them because they're going to do something silly or stupid or whatever? So we get that. But like I said, it takes maybe a couple days to break down those barriers. And we really just try to, like I said, be respectful, be approachable, be friendly. And by, the end of the assignment, we've got a bunch of new friends and it's all good, generally. I mean, of course, sometimes weird things happen, but we try to not think we're any different or better or whatever. I mean, just put that ego aside, because we are wildland firefighters part-time at best. So we're there also to learn a lot. We just don't do a ton of initial attack. We're incredibly experienced at EMS. And I know maybe we'll get a chance to talk about REMS, but that's our expertise and that's our bread and butter that we that we can bring to the equation. But yeah, man, when we come onto a fire, we don't think of it as an us and them at all. And I guess some of that exists maybe in states west of here. I don't know. It seems like maybe it's more of a thing.
There's definitely a pissing contest between, CAL FIRE and, municipal and Fed, or shit, even like Fed agency versus Fed agency, like National Park Service or Forest Service versus Bureau of Land Management, That's one of those things too, because we're kind of on the topic of changing cultures. And I even did it unconsciously. Like that was unconscious bias pretty much. It's like structure versus keyword versus right there. It's almost adversarial, but it shouldn't be like that. And like, looking back at my own career and just kind of judging a book by its cover, I realize now, looking back in retrospect, that was a huge line of bullshit that I was feeding myself, man. I don't get it. I don't know where that comes from.
Yeah, man. I mean, I am proud of our organization and what we do, but I don't get in. I try not to get into any kind of versus thing. I mean, I don't have this. I have some Pollyanna-ish view of the world where we're all going to like get along and it's all, it's all seamless or whatever. But I mean, like I said, when we the REMS thing, rapid extraction module support, the S is almost redundant. When we come to a fire, we try to provide some education. Like, well, who are these guys with all this equipment, and what are they here for? It's still a new enough concept that we try and do kind of almost like a show and tell if there's a chance. Like, this is the type of equipment we carry. These are our capabilities. This is how we can integrate into the system to work with the Med-L, to work with the line medics, to work with, the EMTs on the crew, to extract, a patient. We try and have a little bit of fun. Like maybe we'll do a little bit of training together. We'll get our Stokes litter with the wheel out. We'll have some of the, have the crews roll one of their buddies around and just, like I said, have a little bit of fun and get to know one another a little bit. And it seems to go a long ways, rather than just being kind of off on our own, being potentially aloof and not communicating. Like, it's critical. Like, boom, all of a sudden, you never know when an incident within an incident is going to happen.
Absolutely.
Like, hey, back at home, I know who's on Medic 4 or whatever, the different adjoining or adjacent units on a day-to-day basis. And I know what their capabilities are. Like I said, we're doing that quick size up. So we try to real quickly kind of get to know, okay, we've got this crew, who's working where, kind of recon the area, start playing the what if game. If we have a patient at a certain spot, is there a ship available? Do they have hoist? Do they have short haul? Where can we take our UTV? Okay, who on the crew, what's their training? Do they have an EMT? I mean, there's so much those first few days. I mean, it's sort of a constant process of playing the what if game, but particularly at the beginning of an incident, before we know the lay of the land and before we're dialed in on where the, divisions are and all that, it takes a couple of days to kind of get set up and situated. But yeah, I don't know if you know much about REMS or what it's about.
I don't know anything.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
So let's get into it, man, because this is important.
Yeah, cool.
This is important.
I mean, it came out of Region 5, a bunch of different municipal departments. I want to say Sacramento City, but it might have been Sacramento Metro. I can't remember. But we first encountered REMS, or REM at the time, Rapid Extraction Module, at the Rough Fire in 2015. It was on the Sierra / it was in one of the parks or the monuments. I can't remember which, the Giant Sequoia National Park or Monument, if not mistaken. But basically, one of our guys was out there as a med unit leader, and then one of our guys was there as a line medic, and he was functioning as sort of like a field med L, like at a spike camp, because he's an officer. He was a former, I think currently at the time was a member of the FEMA task force as a medical specialist, safety, line safety guy, and was just serving in that function, coordinating the whereabouts and the activities of the various line medics or ambulances they had up in sort of that, again, kind of in that forward operating area, if you will. And there was a Breckenridge shot crew member that was pinned by a burning log. Yeah, I know. Kind of a big extraction, traumatic for a lot of people. A lot of lessons learned. And when there was the Rocky Mountain area Type 1 team that was managing the incident. And so in the year or two following that incident, we, collectively decided that we wanted to implement a similar program, dedicated for the rapid extraction of the injured firefighter. Because you get someone hurt and severely hurt in not so hospitable terrain, it's going to take a minute to get them out.
Oh yeah.
And so again, all those different things that I talked about, are we going to short haul them? Are we going to hoist them? Stokes, ground ambulance, air ambulance, some combination thereof, treat, blah, blah, blah.
Plus contingencies.
So yeah, so many different. And FireScope had and has a standard. NWCG is working on it. Boy, I guess I should know this. They were originally like a 2-person module. Now we're doing 4. One has to be a single resource boss. At least one is a paramedic. And then I think 2 need to have a certain amount of rope rescue experience. So we bring a whole slew of equipment that would allow us to do everything from, again, a Stokes evacuation with or without ropes, low to high angle, hoist, short haul, auto extrication, because as it turns out, many of wildland fires occur in rather rural areas, and vehicle accidents are fairly common, and not just, fire personnel. But if we can also sort of supplement the capabilities of the local fire and EMS, which again, in rural areas often is volunteer and is kind of remote, And so anyways, there's a few different, and it's growing like gangbusters because it's, people continue to get hurt, and it's not just traumatic injuries. There's sometimes, bee stings, some sort of allergic reaction. Sometimes there's cardiac events, not as common, obviously, since the bulk of the workforce is younger, but it could be an older person doing something on the fire that has a cardiac episode. And we're just refining all of that, and it's been really cool to be kind of on the forefront of that. And one of my captains, Brendan Finnegan, was the line medic on that rough fire, and he has really put together a fabulous, him and some others have put together a great program that is really, like I said, highly respected, and we get requests all the time, even when we're not listed. And it's cool. It's different. It's, one of the challenges is, again, all of a sudden there's now a team of 4. You don't know who's going to sign up and go out. So I know, if I go out as the boss, I know the other 3 members, and usually I've worked with one or more of them, but not necessarily. And even if I've gone with them on an assignment, usually we don't have many incidents that we respond to. So we're not necessarily getting a ton of reps, as opposed to my normal day crew that I work with day in and day out. So we're 4 guys thrown together sort of suddenly, and that's just one of the challenges. And I think IMTs, different med Ls have different comfort levels with, where they're going to put us, how they're going to utilize us. Sometimes we are used kind of more like a line medic type scenario where we even have been asked to split 2 and 2. And, I think initially we were more hesitant to do that because we didn't have our gear set up that we could split and have the same exact capabilities. And we can't quite do that we don't carry, 2 sets of extrication equipment or, 2. But as long as we communicate that, sort of look at it in terms of the risk management process, communicate with the Med L safety divisions or whoever, understanding that, okay, if you do split us, that does kind of affect our capabilities, and you're willing to kind of work with us on that, that's been fine. But that's, it's been cool to be part of a new resource and a new initiative. And that's something that I've enjoyed.
Oh, absolutely. So a question that I have for you is, does West Metro actually do any interagency, if you will, or some kind of cross training with the local hotshots? Because I cannot imagine how valuable this would be to a hotshot crew per se, or a hand crew, shit, even an engine crew, man. So we've definitely tried to do at least a little bit on incidents, whether it was just a quick scenario or review of some equipment that they perhaps carry, or kind of offer, hey, here's a different way of doing that. We actually, on the Reveille fire a couple of years ago, had it all set. We were going to do a mock IWI and even actually do a short haul, but I can't remember the reasons why they had to cancel at the last minute. But we're always trying to at least do a little bit of training on the incidents. But like in the off season, I knew a couple of years ago we had worked with the Tatanka shots, and Dave Zortman, I think is his name, is the superintendent, and we were hoping to host a training for them and some other shot crews at our training center. I don't think that ended up happening. COVID. But I know that we've at least had those discussions again, like, hey, what can we do to help you take care of your own people? Because this kind of evolved a little bit out of the rapid intervention crew or rapid intervention team, RIT or RIC, on structure fires, where we have a dedicated crew outside the structure committed to firefighter rescue, which is a great concept. But what we found is actually when a firefighter gets injured inside the structure, more often than not,
it's the member's own crew or someone immediately adjacent that does the removal. So at the same on the same token that on a wildland fire, it's great to see that shot crews are carrying TRSs, carrying stretchers, have EMTs, are doing some training. And so, there's no substitute for, the horsepower that 20-ish young men and women can offer as far as just moving a patient. And so, so it's really important that crews take that responsibility. And, we may not even be involved in an extraction if one happens, but, again, it's important to have us there, in case our special skills or capabilities are needed. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing that I was trying to refer to is the value that our cooperators have to offer to the Fed programs or even contractors. Doesn't matter. The wildland game in general, that whole wildland versus part, that's why that shit needs to go, because there's a lot of things that could be learned from each other. It's not just a one-way street there. I mean, I'm saying we could learn, you guys can learn from the wildland component and we could learn from the structure component. I think it's a tool that's underutilized and needs to be used more often.
Yeah, the interagency training thing for sure. I mean, the Pike National Forest is basically in our backyard. And we've talked about doing some joint trainings. I don't know that we've done as much as we've hoped to, whether it's, hey, we'll host an S212 at our training center. You guys can have some spaces. This year you provide the instructors and vice versa, or, even just like it's the S223, which is the line EMT or line medic curriculum. That's something that my son is coming in here. I'll be done in a little bit. Okay. Like I said, one of our guys is a Med L on the Rocky Mountain Type 1 team. And so we've worked within the region we've taught quite a few of those courses. There isn't like a task book for the line medic position. But I think that's something that we've been involved in some of those discussions on. Like I said, we run a lot of medical calls. Not that many of them are in a wilderness setting necessarily, but we do a decent amount of backcountry rescue on the trails, open space trails in our district. But yeah, again, if that's some expertise that we can share with the wildland community, then that's been important for us to do.
Oh, absolutely, man. Things of value, man. That's what it's all about. Cross training, getting to know each other, familiarizing each other with each other's capabilities. That's a big thing, because I sure as shit would love to have a paramedic with some sort of, it's not going to be a true ALS kind of scenario. It's not like you're going to have a box with you, but as in the meat wagon box, but still, you're going to have higher level care with you. And I'd sure as shit wanted to have that in our back pockets if I was out on the line. That's huge.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's come a long ways, man. I mean, EMS was kind of an afterthought when I first started doing this. And I remember some guys going out on a EMT line medic assignment on the Zirkle complex in like 2002 or 3. That was sort of almost like, hey, why not? I don't think it was I can't remember who was managing the incident. I wasn't even on the Wildland team at the time. But like I said, we are the sponsoring agency for Colorado Task Force 1, which is the FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Task Force. And so we've been on quite a few assignments, in hurricanes commonly, and quite a few other types of disasters that we've been out on. So we've learned a few things about doing medicine in remote areas. And it's been cool to see how that has grown in the wildland world, although I'm not real clear with how the Forest Service, like the medical direction, works as far as from state to state or region to region or agency to agency. I think they still have some work to do to sort that out. And that's, I know, been one of the challenges for my colleague Greg who's the Med L, that utilizing out of state paramedics sometimes is not real easy. There's red tape. And so that's been a challenge at times. So it'd be great to simplify that. I know it's not as simple as just snapping your fingers and making it happen, but I know that that's an important consideration to try to simplify that, to get guys reciprocity, or the ability to practice across state lines more easily.
Yeah, that whole reciprocity thing I think that's the biggest hang up as far as medical direction, as far as a generalized states, like United States wide kind of format. But yeah, man, I mean, I wish we could have some sort of standardized program as far as EMS goes, from your base EMS, your EMT basic all the way through your paramedic. That'd be cute. That'd be cool, man. That'd be huge.
Yeah. Like I said, I know people are working towards that. But that has even affected what medications we can carry. Because certain narcotic medications, it's not legal to carry them across state lines. But it's nice that we have that has allowed for some innovation. And there's some other medications that we can carry that are legal, that actually that can work similarly well. But that limits us when we go across state lines. So, yeah,
and that's the thing too. Is like, speaking of medical direction, sorry, ADHD moment. I got to get you hooked up with Dr. Timothy Durkin. He was actually the last guest on the episode, and he has a lot he could plug you in with. But yeah, he does a lot of cool stuff. He's one of the medical directors for the interagency EMS program. So he's got a lot of information about that.
Yeah, and like I said, my buddy Greg Bergen is one of the Med Ls on the Rocky Mountain Type 1 team. If you ever want to chat with him, he's pretty darn knowledgeable. He's had to deal with a lot of those weird situations when it comes to reciprocity and certification and medication and medical direction. It's not necessarily streamlined and simple, unfortunately.
It's definitely not. That's for sure. So. But yeah, man, it sounds like West Metro has a pretty good program lined up, and it sounds like you guys do a lot for the wildland game. Obviously, more so for the municipal side of things, but I think this whole episode has kind of a common theme. It's breaking down those barriers, man, and learning from each other, and it's huge. We can learn so much from each other, and breaking down those barriers. One day I want to see it happen. It's like one of my missions, and stories like yours are critical for that.
Yeah. And we try to do the same, just on a more local level. We are doing the same with our other fire department neighbors, whether it's doing joint trainings at the training center, or again, back when we did prescribed fire, that was a great thing that allowed us to get to know one another in that setting, working together, doing prescribed fire, and building those relationships, so that when you show up on a call, you can go, okay, cool, I know that guy, I can trust him, boom, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to do that as best we can with our neighbors. And it's just challenging when we've got a busy training schedule, and everyone has different competing priorities, and there's a lot of stuff going on. But that does go a long ways for sure when we show up on a scene and someone, you recognize them, and you can trust them. I mean, that is critical, definitely.
Oh yeah, fire's a small world, man. And speaking of small worlds, side note here, I'd say it's not too often that you hear that a municipal department has a prescribed fire program. It's pretty rare that you hear that. Yeah, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to really get that off the ground. For a few years, as much as we'd like to, it's great training. Part of the reason we were doing that is for like invasive species control in some of the parks and open space.
turns out it's just tough to get a smoke permit. That's the biggest thing. There's so many sensitive receptors, or, I know the state is wants to make it easier for prescribed fire to occur. But like I said, when you're in a busy metro area with many hundreds of thousands of people and highways and such, it's just hard to balance all those different competing factors.
NEPA's hard, man.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, and the one guy that was our prescribed fire, our burn boss, moved to Boise and took a job with Boise Fire Department. And so then we were working with one of our supplemental resources. We also have a supplemental program where we have 35-ish people that are, some of which are retired West Metro folks, some are retired feds that are just looking for like a sponsoring agency so they can go out as like an AD type situation. And so one of our supplemental resources is a burn boss. And so we were working with him. But that was in addition to his day job with the State Forest Service. So, and the other common thread is wearing a lot of hats, right?
Oh yeah.
And we haven't even really talked about the mitigation piece, which I think we're thinking about talking about. I don't even know where we're at it on time.
You could yell all the time in the world. We'd take 3 hours. We could take an hour.
Okay.
We're already over an hour. But yeah. So the mitigation thing, I mean, since we're on the topic, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I was on the High Park fire outside of Fort Collins in 2012. Several hundred homes burned down. We're working nights up in the Glacier View subdivision. And the fire was on the south side of the Poudre River at that point. But it was pretty clear that if the fire spotted across and ran up the canyon wall, it was aimed right at this Glacier View subdivision. And some homes burned there. Some homes had burned in another part of the area as well. And then on the drive home from High Park, the Waldo Canyon fire was blowing up, and we had some of our folks that were down there, obviously. And then the following June 2013, I was on the Black Forest fire. And so in that 13-month period, I saw more smoking foundations than I thought I would see in my entire career. And I hate to use the term wake-up call, but it was sort of like, call it a wake-up call where it was like, oh crap, these wildland urban conflagrations are not just a California problem.
Oh no, it's not unique to California.
Like, that's a California thing, right? Yeah. Well, then all these homes were destroyed, and we took a look at our district and realized, oh crap, the conditions here in some of our communities are pretty similar to some of these areas that have been affected with these big incidents. And so, I started getting interested initially in pre-plans, being kind of a map geek, FOBS, and then
just crushing it on GIS.
Yeah, what's that?
Crushing it with GIS.
Yeah, back in the day, I used to teach classes in map and compass navigation in California, and I was involved in backpacking, rock climbing, worked for Outward Bound, did all that kind of stuff. So a bit of a map geek.
It's a dying skill right there.
Yeah, totally. And what I realized, on the Black Forest fire, not to throw anyone under the bus, but that first day we weren't able to engage. I was on a Type 6 engine. We weren't able to engage and be super effective because we didn't get a very good briefing. Our situational awareness wasn't great. All these watch outs, extreme fire behavior, didn't know the area, didn't have any maps, weren't able to get comms with our supervisor. Just kind of just not a great situation.
Swiss cheese model lining up.
And what's that?
The Swiss cheese model lining up.
Yeah, totally. And so we chose to disengage along with a couple other engines. I think it was the right choice. But the next day things were different. And so got a few lessons were learned on that. Like one, if people come in to our district and we asked them to come support us during a rapidly expanded urban interface wildland fire, we need to give them some tools to have enhanced situational awareness. And, let's start putting some things into place so that we maybe, can start thinking about, okay, if we get the fire in some of these areas, how are we going to attack it? Where are we going to attack it? Where can we have staging areas, drop points, safety zones, dip sites, this, that, and the other, kind of the standard pre-plan model. And so at the same time, one of our neighboring agencies, South Metro, and Castle Rock were working on, and I think it was the South Metro at the time. Anyways, we came with kind of like a common format, built some pre-plans, worked with the GIS folks. Like I said, I did kind of my FOBS thing. And fortunately we haven't used those much in the wildland arena, but we have used those more for, like I said, the backcountry rescue, because we have multiple open space systems in our district that we respond to. But as I was driving around doing that pre-planning, I started realizing that, like I said, this looks eerily similar to the Waldo Canyon, the area affected by the Waldo Canyon fire. And so I don't remember how it all kind of came together, but I know that the wildland captain and chief at the time had been given the direction from our fire chief that, hey, do what you need to do. Waldo Canyon we can't have a Waldo Canyon in our area, in our district. And it was just, I found all that stuff real interesting. I started watching the Jack Cohen videos. If you know Jack Cohen.
Not really familiar.
The retired U.S. Forest Service research scientist who had done all the research and all the field studies as to why homes ignite, and things that homeowners can take, the steps that homeowners and communities can take to reduce your wildfire.
I do know who you're talking about.
Yeah, Jack Cohen is the man.
Okay.
Jack Cohen is the man. Huge respect for the work that he's done. And so, for a couple of years, it was really trying to figure out, like, okay, there's this Ready, Set, Go program. What's that all about? Fire adapted communities, and what is the deal? And FireWise, NFPA, and there's all these different kind of programs and approaches. And so sort of a bit of a self study and just calling people, and learning from them, Jerry McAdams in Boise, Justice Jones in Austin, Texas, Paul Cada in Vail, people at the NFPA FireWise program, et cetera, et cetera. And I got involved with the Fire Adapted Community Learning Network, and then Fire Adapted Colorado. These groups or communities community networks of wildfire mitigation or fire adaptation practitioners that were trying to learn from one another, because who wants to reinvent the wheel? And no one has the capacity and funding to do as much of this work as we'd like. And so you need to be real efficient with your time, money, energy, and whatnot. And so, it just became clear that the challenge, of course, is where does our responsibility begin and where does it lie? Because we don't own these homes. And again, those open space areas that I spoke of, that's not the property that we manage. It's a city, county, and in some cases, private open space. We're a special district, so that none of that is our property, but we are experts in fire behavior to a point. And, we try to share this information with our citizens, with community groups, in a collaborative fashion. That was the big message that I got as well, was you've got to build those partnerships. You have to collaborate across boundaries, or need to work with various neighborhood groups. Neighbors need to work with one another. And again, there's tons of people in the Fire Adapted Communities Learning Network doing really, really good work across the country. We haven't been able to give it as much time, energy, and attention, I think, as it deserves. And we're kind of in the process of revising our community wildfire protection plan. And in fact, we have a big stakeholders meeting this coming Thursday, where we're going to meet with them and do some brainstorming, build those relationships, start taking a look at what are some potential solutions we can implement. What's that really going to look like? What's that going to cost? What do we need to devote in terms of capacity, funding, et cetera? Just because we've got I think there's a lot of work to be done, and we need to take some steps forward because it's so tricky, because you've got the wildfire, risk. Okay, what is risk? I've heard it articulated as a consequence times probability. I mean, as we assess risk from a wildland fire, how do you factor in that probability piece? It can be very hard to convince people that they face a risk or a hazard. Like, I don't know if it's in human. Well, it hasn't happened yet. Even if it's happened just in a community not far from here, it's a hard thing to get people to take action to change their behavior. So one of the really cool things, there's people that are doing in this community doing social science research, folks at CU, the Rocky Mountain Research Station, and elsewhere, that are really taking a look at, okay, what are the human factors and what's the social piece, so that we can maximize our efforts to get people to change their behavior. And so that stuff's real fascinating, because, kind of back to the one size fits all with the mental health, like what may work in one community may not work in another community because of all sorts of various factors. And so being real specific and customizing, a program to work with a specific community is what seems to work best. But that does potentially take some more time and effort to figure out what is it going to take for that community. But in the long run, that does yield better results. So, the mitigation stuff's just super interesting to me. Like I said, back to the Black Forest fire, so what we saw on that second day, 24 hours or more after the fire front had passed, homes were igniting. And we were also saving homes. And what was happening was smoldering and low intensity surface fire was still creeping towards, and then in some cases, igniting the siding, combustible siding on homes. It's not, the front comes through. It's not like a flood per se, and it just burns everything in its wake. We've learned so much more about why homes ignite during wildfires, and so often it's the embers that can carry miles from the fire front. And so just all that, the science, the hard science that Jack Cohen and then others have done, combined with that social science that all those researchers are doing, it's just a really interesting nexus of all that stuff. Unfortunately, we're getting more and more examples of how and why homes or entire communities ignite and are destroyed. But fortunately, if we can take advantage of those opportunities and learn from what has happened elsewhere, we can hopefully make a difference. But there's so much work to be done in the West. It's daunting.
Oh yeah.
It is daunting.
Oh yeah, man. The Firewise community program that really needs to be expanded to a very, very large scale.
Yeah.
I mean, the only place that we have to go as far as the human race is out into the woods, basically. I mean, if you look at the West Coast, man, right. That's the only place you can go. All the valleys are packed with people. At the end of the day, there's nowhere else for us to go. And unfortunately, that encroaches on the wildland urban interface. And shit, even in areas like Ashland during the, I can't remember the fire's name, but there was a wind event and it just ripped through, started in Ashland and ripped through Talent and Phoenix.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff could be mitigated, not necessarily prevented. Fires are going to exist no matter what. Now, when you get into a situation where it's PL5, like we are in now, and resources are strapped, it's 100 and F my life out.
Yeah.
Humidities are in the toilet. Recoveries are equally in the toilet. And then you have this catastrophic drought across the West Coast. I mean, it's bound to happen. And unfortunately, human nature isn't very good at foresight, I want to say, and like predicting the future. But it's going to happen. And you need to be able to, I guess, fortify your home to be fire adapted. It's critical, especially since we're seeing more prevalence of these catastrophic fires affecting communities directly.
Yeah, man. I mean, Jack Cohen, to quote him specifically, he says, wildfires are inevitable.
Yep.
Home destruction is not.
Very true.
And so we know how and why homes ignite. And there are steps that people can take that are proven to reduce the ignitability of your structure. But I mean, even part of the mitigation piece, that's one term. We talk about community risk reduction, fire adaptation. There's a lot more to it. Like evacuations is the topic I am hearing more and more about, because like you said, this extreme fire behavior, which we saw in East Troublesome fire last year, and then on one of the fire, Dixie, 15, 18, 20 miles in an operational period. So we know suppression is not going to be effective. Evacuation is critical. And so there's a lot of innovative approaches to evacuation that are being looked at and worked on. A group called Zone Haven is doing some cool stuff in California and in Oregon. And I just know that's an critical piece that we all need to be aware of. So if you're not signed up with your reverse 911 emergency notification, do that.
You probably should be.
Because even if you are, that system isn't fail safe. And fire can sometimes move so quickly that, by the time the notification gets out, it's almost too late. But yeah, there's so many different, pieces to this, risk reduction, mitigation, the whole wildfire game industry, world is really changing in a lot of different ways.
Well, the rules of wildfire have changed in general. I mean, talking to some of the saltier, I guess, veterans of fire, people with 20, 30 plus years in the game, they've all of them, 100% of them have said that there is an unequivocal change in fires from when they began their career to now. And it's only trending one direction, and it's not the good one. So I hate to break it to people, but I mean, you could throw all the resources in aviation and retardant and water and all of the stuff that you want at some of these fires in these fire prone areas, these particularly overstocked forests in the WUI, in the wild and urban interface, and it's not going to do a damn thing.
Right.
It's not.
That's the huge message. So even the term defensible space, I do not like. That's falling out of favor, because the term defensible space, kind of by definition, is a space where firefighters can safely defend your home. That's creating a quite potentially unrealistic expectation that firefighters will have enough of them, enough of us, or fire behavior will be such that we'll choose to stay and defend a house. So what we're trying to kind of frame it as, the home ignition zone is the more commonly accepted terminology, the home and its immediate surroundings, that you want to take the steps to create an environment and your home is safe. I'm mixing the words. With little or no intervention from firefighters is the term. A standalone home, that's the goal that will survive a wildfire with little or no intervention for firefighters, because that's most realistic.
That is most realistic.
Right.
This is the thing. It all just kind of boils back down to your structured triage. I mean, you have your standalone, you have your stand and your defendable. I guess you could say your stand and defend, or your, sorry, this is a red property. There's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
That's the way it works. It's
right. And those are those kind of conversations we really try to have with our communities, that we'll do everything we can. And when we have a structure fire isolated to one structure, we've got, 8, 10 rigs with, 40 or more people at that structure. But when you have a wildland fire with, dozens or potentially hundreds of homes threatened, it's just not feasible for us to be able to be at every structure. And of course, like you said, once you add in potentially extreme fire behavior, the best choice for us to be safe is to retreat to the safety zone, and then of course patrol following a fire front. That's like modern day structure protection.
Oh yeah.
Or that's becoming more the back that's truck in, engine in. You have 2 lines pulled around the back. I mean, that's nice in the textbook, and in some scenarios that will work, but in the face of extreme fire behavior, no, that is
it just doesn't work, especially in the timber. I mean, shit, that doesn't even,
in the timber.
Sometimes that doesn't even work out in the desert, like sagebrush, man.
Right.
We've seen it time and time again. You get a little wind on that, and it's off to the races. Right.
And I think that's a little bit sometimes a challenge for us, because the bulk of our district, grass and shrub, we do have some heavy oak brush down in some southern part of our district, and some timber, and are just at least just uphill from us. I think sometimes there's a perception that we're not in the forest, so we don't face the same risk. But yeah, man, I'd hate to see extreme fire behavior in some of the neighborhoods. Like I said, once you get wind on it, and that heavy oak brush, that's going to be really, the suppression difficulty is going to be off the charts. And who knows if we're even going to have, aircraft in the area. There's no guarantee that we're going to have, all those suppression resources that we'd like. So
we can't depend on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just trying to, honestly articulate what we can and we can't do. And then I love how the Colorado Springs Fire Department's mitigation division talks about sharing the responsibility. I think that's one of their mottos. So I think that's just those conversations that we need to have and will be having with our community about what we can and can't do. And again, where our responsibilities, lie, and that those partnerships and those relationships. So that's the process that we are engaged in when it comes to wildland and mitigation, like I talked about. And we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, it's just this weird thing, because you have this perfect storm of everybody wanting their own little slice of heaven, their isolated cabin out in the woods, or, on the side of a hill, or somewhere that's, in the wooey. Then you have a degree of denial, which is, oh yeah, this place hasn't burned in 20 something years. It's not going to happen to us. Then on top of that, you have the hubris factor, which human nature is inherently, I guess, prone to hubris. And then you have the harsh realities, and you have to have that harsh discussion with general public to say, hey, this is how it is. We don't have the resources to do this. And you have your 4 categories. I misquoted there. You have your prep and defend, you have your standalone structure, you have your prep and leave, and then you have your rescue drive-by categories of your structured triage. And really explaining that to people it's hard to have that conversation because this is their, slice of heaven or their dream, right, their entire life savings. They've worked hard for these places, and I get it. But the reality is that it could happen. And when it does, there's simply not enough people or resources or anything that you can do, really. I mean, in some situations you can, but the fire behavior that we've been seeing lately, you can't do a damn thing about it. And it sucks having that conversation.
Yeah, it really is. And that's, like I said, that's kind of what we're embarking on as we get a little further down this road with our community wildfire protection plan and our mitigation program. And those are some of the things, like I said, we'll learn from our partners that have been doing this for a little bit longer. Like, how do you frame these conversations? And if and when we get to a point where we want to do individual home assessments, and take a look at the vulnerabilities and make recommendations for people, again, those conversations and even the topic of liability and there's no guarantees.
There's none.
And these aren't absolutes, but we're doing our best to provide you with, state of the industry, information and assessment and all that. That's part of that's what the process we're engaged in, and like I said, there's a lot of great people doing this work that we will learn from and borrow their ideas and, use them as subject matter experts. And it's an interesting one too, because in some areas, I know that, people don't necessarily want to hear you need to do this from the government. I don't know that that's such the case in our communities. I know in certain communities that's a big deal, especially the federal government.
Oh yeah.
Our credibility, the trust that our communities have in us, I think is very high. And I think we have a really good relationship with our citizens. But that'll be an interesting, again, how to approach all of that. And again, one of the other things to leverage is community members. We talk about these communities like spark plugs, often retired men who are like looking for something to do that maybe used to like run a business or, how can we, tap into those existing networks, those existing relationships. And if hearing the same information from a neighbor has more of an effect than hearing it from us, or hearing it from us and the neighbor in conjunction has more effectiveness. Again, that's all, different tools that we can use to try to, again, get people to take personal responsibility. So yeah, I'm fascinated to see kind of where we go from here with all of this, because it's cutting edge for sure. I mean, like I said, there's people doing fabulous work, using good data, and making a difference. So I'm hopeful that we're going to, be able to move the bar on some of this stuff.
Oh yeah, it's a definite hearts and minds campaign at the end of the day. I mean, it's hard to tell people that, hey, yeah, you're at risk and you should do this. You need to do this or else you're going to lose pretty much everything, right? People don't like to hear that. And that's that hubris factor. But I think the dynamic is changing, especially when we have, like you were saying earlier, these unfortunate lessons learned by these catastrophic fires, like the Camp Fire, for instance. That was a nightmare scenario. We have a new start over in the El Dorado, and it's off to the races on every new start that we have. So hopefully we can change the dynamic and get people to take that personal accountability, that responsibility upon themselves to do what they can. I know that these projects are expensive, but what's more expensive, losing everything and all your valuables in your house? I mean, the house is probably going to be insured, but get out of there.
That's a whole nother piece. I don't think we've seen a ton of our residents losing their insurance or not being able to get reinsured, but I know that's a big,
it's a hot topic,
topic in some of the communities, even just uphill from us. And I know in some cases, insurance companies do actually kind of go out and do home assessments. So it's not quite an industry standard per se, but I know the insurance companies are potentially a partner in this as well as the realtors even. There's some people doing some kind of creative stuff where they can even, like in Boulder County, there's a Wildfire Partners is the name of the program, where it's actually certification that then can be on the MLS. Like, hey, this is a Wildfire Partners certified home that can help people with resale value. So there's
that
just
peace of mind.
All sorts of. What's that?
I said that and peace of mind.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So there's just a bunch of different interested parties where wildfire was not necessarily or wasn't a big kind of like drops in a bucket compared to hail and hurricanes, if I'm not mistaken, even just a few years ago. But I'm not an insurance industry expert, but it seems like, more and more insurance companies are getting interested in wildfire, obviously.
Yeah. And obviously they're going to be, especially with the trending direction that we have with scope, intensity, and occurrence of these wildfires, man. Yeah. It's another thing too, is like if these evacuation things too, I mean, there's at least in my state, there's no such thing as a mandatory evacuation. It's not like the sheriff can come in your house and pull you out of there and be like, all right, let's go, grab your shit, let's go. It doesn't work like that around here, but I will say that these evacuation notices and these warnings and these mandatory evacuations, they're for a reason. You can get a new house, but we can't replace you. So if it comes to that and you're in the direct path of a wildfire, get the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah, man. I mean, and you even hear stories about, the fire prediction software, dude, the rates of spread. I mean, that's again, in the lighter fuel models that we typically see in our district, what surprises people are the rates of spread. In the grass, we had a fire on Super Bowl Sunday this year that moved real quick. But now obviously we're seeing the rates of spread in timber. Some of these fires we mentioned previously that are off the charts. I asked them, like, are they starting to adjust, behave or whatever fire prediction software they're using? Because it's just a guess how quickly this thing's going to go.
Oh yeah. These things are getting up and they're marching along real quick. Like, I know the Dixie fire made 100,000 acre push in one operational shift. That is insane in the timber. Most wildland firefighters, they see timber, it's like, okay, we got some time, right? Grass, right? Obviously you don't have time. It's get after it now, right?
Exactly.
But you're seeing very, very, very fast rates of spread even in the timber. It's changing. It's changed. There's no
it has
about it. It has changed.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, like I said, wearing a lot of different hats. We're doing a lot of different things. Sort of the nature of an all hazards agency. And I think we're one thing I will add that we did just create a new position for a wildland coordinator. And my friend and colleague, Brendan Finnegan, I talked about earlier, who was the line medic on the rough fire, is going to start in that position in just a couple of weeks. Because we recognize that our plates are pretty full at Station 9. And it was just an unsustainable model. Guys were getting kind of burned out, and our workload was such that we couldn't do all the things we wanted to do. And so, we created this full-time position. That job description is being developed. And just excited to see that we're giving some additional support and resources to the Wildland program. I have no shortage of ideas of things that I would personally like to do, but we all have a shortage of time and energy. Like I said, we're not getting any slower, and I'm not getting any younger. And so, just creatively trying to I mean, that's the thing. It's just, there's no one size fits all model for this for municipal fire department either. It's like the Ventura County Fire Department. This is similar in size to us. I mean, they pretty much have their own Type 3 incident management team.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they had the Thomas Fire, a 300,000 acre fire in their district, pretty much.
Right off their back doorstep.
It's a different scenario. So again, there's no one size fits all. And, but I'm excited to see that we're creating a new position and kind of see how that trickles down to the rest of us and see where we go from here. Cause the wildfire problem is getting more complex.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that's another question too, is, I know that a lot of, utilities companies have been partnering with municipal departments to create their own wildland programs. I'm not sure if you guys are looking into something like that. But with that being said, are you guys looking to get into the hand crew program at all and having your own, forming your own hand crews, getting more into the wildland theater?
Well, so the utilities companies is a good topic. I know the Colorado Springs Utilities has been very proactive, and they've had a program for, probably a decade or so. And I know some of those folks, and Jeremy Taylor, who used to work for the Springs Fire Department, now works for the utilities company. They've done prescribed fire and thinning and a bunch of different work. So they're like a model of what works, or just one way to do it. They're a partner of ours that we'd like to reach out to, not Colorado Springs, but the utilities company. That's something we've had a lot of conversations with them. Some of the departments just up the hill from us, Evergreen, Elk Creek, Inner Canyon, all have modules / fuels crews, some of which, are full-on fire modules and that list and go out on assignments, just depending year to year and who they've got. Some are just kind of stay at home, do fuels work and initial attack and such. That's a possibility. I think it's just we're not sure yet. Again, it's kind of this tricky thing where none of the property, not tricky, it's just interesting. None of the property, the open space properties are not ours. So, would having a crew be the most efficient way of doing it? And then just, how would that be funded? Or is this one of those things where we can just work out an agreement, or said community can work out an agreement with one of the other modules in the area, potentially, and can they be shared across boundaries? They can. So, it's something we've talked about from time to time, but, that's yet to be seen.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just curious because I know that's kind of becoming more prevalent around here on the, the more coastal states. I know NV Energy has an excellent partnership with several departments here in Nevada. And then obviously PG&E probably forcedly, but that's neither here nor there. It's they're trying to make it right. That's the point that matters. But it's just, I think that the wildland problem is going to extend far beyond the capabilities of the federal side of things and the state component. So I think the more wildland folks that we have out there, the more trained individuals out there, it's going to help solve those problems when they do arise, which is not a if, it's more of a when and an inevitability when it happens.
Yeah. We've talked about maybe we would launch something like a chipping program. Get a chipper, have a couple of staff that are available to take that to various communities from time to time. You bring it to the curb, we chip it, as an example. But again, I think we're just sort of at the initial stages of trying to sort out what are the solutions that we want to implement. Like I said, this meeting we're having in a couple of days is bring in some of our local partners and some folks from other states and just have them present on their different program, their home assessment program, or talk about the chipping program you have, or the mod you have or XYZ. And then again, what realistically will that cost? And try to just prioritize and incrementally, try to start tackling these problems. Because it's some of these things. It's hard to know how much time, energy, resources it's going to take. So we're trying to get an idea of what that is going to look like before we start making commitments to anything. So it's going to take some time to roll it out. And I mean, I'd love to have a crew available to do that work, and a staff of people doing all these different things. But we don't have a ton of like extra money laying around. You know what I mean?
I don't think anybody does.
Right, exactly. So, what grant opportunities are available? I know the state of Colorado has been devoting more and more money towards quote unquote mitigation, some of which more recently I think is going to be more building capacity, not just projects per se. I'm hopeful that there'll be more and more monies available, because we just don't have a extra money to do all the different things we'd like to do.
And that's the thing, though, is like we've I've noticed a theme here about cost. I mean, these programs are expensive, but I guarantee you that the cost of suppressing a wildfire is a hell of a lot more than the mitigation and prevention efforts that go into it.
Yeah, there's some great, I want to say Headwaters economics. I think there's some group.
It's Headwaters. I know exactly what article you're talking about.
Yeah, done some fabulous, like the true cost of wildfire, and just taking a more holistic look at all these things. And it's so hard to, for some reason, it's just hard to get money for prevention or mitigation, although it has been proven that it can save you so much money in the long run. I don't know why it's so hard to get money for that, but it just is.
It's just like the rest of humanity's problems. I mean, a hurricane's not a problem until it's in your face, right? Same thing with the wildfire.
Good point. So, yeah, like I said, like to think we're on the brink of doing some more good, positive, proactive stuff. So I will let you know how it goes.
Hell yeah, man. What does the future look like for you?
Well, I mean, great question. Like I said, I'm a lieutenant at Station 9 with our Wildland hub. We're just real soon going to have a new, captain in this coordinator position. So depending on what roles and responsibilities he takes on, it's going to determine what trickles down to those of us at Station 9 and other stations. And then the whole mitigation piece, again, it's yet to be seen what that could look like, whether we'll choose to put a dedicated staff person or people into that. So I'm a little bit in a wait and see mode with that stuff. I mean, I'm actually planning a backpacking trip in the Sierra.
Nice.
Leaving in just less than a week, which, man, back in the day, planning a backpacking trip in August or into September in the Sierra was no big deal. But now every year it's like, what's the smoke condition? What's air quality?
Yeah. Where's the fire heading?
So, my old friend Nick, who lives in Joshua Tree, he's an old climbing partner of mine. We've got a trip planned up outside of Bishop, so about 4 hours south of you. We'll see. We're watching the air quality, and we are, got a kind of a plan B and a plan C depending on what it looks like. And then, like I said, this fall I might become available for a fire assignment. Not sure yet. And spend time with the family. Like I said, that was a priority this year, and that's been real good. My son starts school here tomorrow.
Nice.
That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Oh yeah, man. Well, where can we find you if people have questions? I mean, where can we find you on socials or email? Anything that you're willing to give out?
Yeah, I mean, my email, you can put it in the show notes, or I can just say it. What would you prefer?
Oh, it's either or.
Okay.
I can put it in the show.
Yeah,
That's where you can say it.
SORR. So first initial, last name at westmetrofire.org. I am on Facebook. It shows my age. And Instagram, I don't use Instagram a ton, but I do have a Instagram account, Steve Orr 94, just 94. And like I said, you can probably put all that stuff in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Sweet. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll definitely refer people to you if they want to find out more about the West Metro Fire program. It sounds like you guys have a pretty awesome program over there. And it's cool to have a structure guy on the show. It's definitely a lot of overlap, and I think a lot of people lose sight of the wildland and there's a very important and structure or municipal, not versus. Yeah. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned and taught to each other. It's a two-way street. So just want to thank you for being on the show. But before I let you go, I always give an opportunity for you to give a shout out to a homie, a hero, mentor. Who do you got for us, man?
Well, can I do two?
You can do as many as you want.
Well, I mean, we were talking about our spouse. I talked about my wife and just the incredible support she's given me over the years through thick and thin, with all the just day in, day out of being gone on a 48-96 schedule to, being gone on wildfire assignments or being gone for 35 days at the recovery center. So Susan, thank you. You're just phenomenal support. I love you. Appreciate you. And then the second would be Brendan Finnegan. I mentioned him earlier. He was actually one of the recipients of the 2021 Paul Gleason Leadership Award, or Lead by Example Award, I think is what it's called. It's an incredible honor for us, for him, for our department, for our wildland program. This is a guy that is one of the hardest working guys I know, and has been with me through thick and thin, a lot of thick and a lot of thin, and a lot of adventures, a lot of hard work, man. We've been doing it for a long time. He's about to take this new position. Appreciate all your leadership, all your mentorship, your friendship, and your support, and look forward to the next chapter as this thing evolves.
Hell yeah, man. Well, Steve, thank you for being on the show, man. I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll get you back on here.
Cool, man. Totally appreciate it, and stay in touch.
Will do, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. See you on the next one.
All right. Thanks.
And boom, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of the Anchor Point Podcast is in the books with Steve Orr. Steve, dude, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your shared experience, sharing your experience with mental health, man. That is powerful stuff, and I think more people need to hear it, and I think more people need to normalize that this is a thing that we may encounter over our lives. And it's not just, I guess, unique to the Wildland Fire Service. I mean, your structure and your municipal people, our cooperators, our contractors, everybody may experience some of this stuff, but the biggest thing is to overcome it and overcome it correctly. So that being said, stay out of the bottle and go see a therapist. It's important stuff. So Steve, once again, thank you so much. For the rest of you, mental health, it's coming up to the end of the season, so get on it. Start making appointments, start talking to somebody, establish that rapport, and get it done. There's no shame in it. So with that being said, special shout out to our sponsors. We've got Mystery Ranch, makers of the finest damn fire line gear and load-bearing essentials in the game. Go check out the Backbone series, and you can go visit that whole thing by visiting this website. Go to www.mysteryranch.com and check it out. We've got Hot Shot Brewery, kick-ass coffee for a kick-ass cause, and a portion of the proceeds will always go back to the Wildland Firefighter Foundation. Go over to www.hotshotbrewing.com and check it out. We've got the Ass Movement. They are the ultimate in poo-bearing propaganda, and if you guys need anything, well, go over to www.thefirewild.com and check out the Ass Movement. Oh yeah, and at checkout, enter the code AnchorPointAss10 all one word, for 10% off your entire order. And then last but not least, we've got the Smoky Generation, also known as the American Wildfire Experience. Bethany, you have a kick-ass organization over there. Keep it up. Go over to www.wildfireexperience.org and check it out. You guys know the drill. Have fun, stay safe, stay savage. We'll tie in later. Peace.